Hey everyone, welcome to Bottom Line Upfront Military Benefits. I'm Jeff, I'll be your host for this video. And today we're covering the Career Intermission Program, or CIP. And I also have the privilege of interviewing two service members, Brianna and Kate, and how they successfully utilized the program and separated and got back into active duty. Also at the very end, we'll be covering some lessons learned and covering the top frequently asked questions. So with that said, let's get started. First, as a reminder, we are a private 501c3 corporation, so all the views and statements here are of our own. We do not represent any official guidance or views of the DoD or any like organizations. Also, this video is very Air Force policy focused, so please ensure, if you are in one of the other services, please ensure to double check with your own CIP office and guidelines if you are interested to learn more. So the Career Intermission Program is a talent retention tool, first authorized as a pilot program within the fiscal year 2009 National Defense Authorization Act. And it's important to note that the Army and the Air Force really didn't even kick it in until 2014. But good news is that the 2019 NDAA actually established CIP as a actual permanent authorized program. So we can see it continue on for some time now. In the documentation, it says the long-term intent of this program is to retain the valuable experience and training service members possess that might otherwise be lost due to permanent separations. As far as who's eligible, we have active duty, active guard, and active reserve members. The reason can be personal, for family reasons, or even just professional if you want to go work private sector for a little while, or gain a bachelor's or master's degree or more so. The break in service, or the military sabbatical, is for 1 to 3 years, and it's important to note that this does not count towards your total active time or your time towards retirement. The typical OBAC period, or within the documentation, it says for every 1 month taken out, you owe back 2, so 2 times what you take out. And you do separate, so you get a DD 214 out of it, and you enter the individual ready reserve status, so IRR. On IRR, you and your family are authorized 2/30 of your basic pay, 2 household good moves, so 1 paid move to separate and go to where you intend to stay, and then another 1 paid household good moves returning back to active duty. As far as leave is concerned, before you separate, your leave is paused, so make sure to note what you have built up, and then once you go back into service, you still have that leave that's already been accrued. And you can use it after you come back in. Great news is that medical care and dental care is included, so if you do decide to take it out to have a baby, all those expenses are covered by the government, which is great, as if you are on active duty. And finally, the VA disability is also authorized. So because you get that DD 214, you can apply for VA disability, so that's important to note far ahead of time if you do need a ability case or to provide that, meet with your service provider to provide the case. And it is tax-free. On IR, you are not authorized bonus or incentive pay if you were receiving that previously. You are not authorized to be considered for promotion during the program. You're not authorized to SGLI, but you can apply for VGLI. And then you're not authorized standard BAH or the VAS allowances. To apply, there's typically 3 boards a year, and typically the services want you to have at least 3 years in before applying. Upon selection and approval, you have that letter with your name on it. You have 12 months from that date to choose a separation date and initiate the program. So you do have a good window after being approved. All right, with all that said, let's jump into what our service members have to say that have actually done the program with this video's breakdown. First up, we have Brianna, or Bree. So from my understanding, you're a space officer that actually just recently returned from the program about a year ago. Could you please share your story, why you took it out, how long you took it out, and anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So yes, I've just been back on active duty for a couple days over a year. So I returned back to active duty in August of 2019. I participated in the Career Intermission program for the full 3 years. So I entered in 2016. So when I was applying, it had just become a program versus a pilot program. I looked at it when it was a pilot program, wasn't so sure it was going to keep going, so I waited a year before doing it. And my reasons were personal. My husband and I are both active duty. We're both space officers, so we both have shift work. So we did have a son, and it was very hectic having a nanny with 2 shift schedules. So we chose the program to have a second baby. So I did the full 3 years. And so it was beneficial for my family. It slowed our pace down, helped us kind of calm down at home. And I went back to work when my daughter started preschool. So it was honestly a very perfect program it was a good fit for us. And I came back straight into the Pentagon on active duty. So returning to active duty was very interesting for me because I didn't return back to a space operational base like I had originally thought I was. So my career field manager worked with my assignment team. They were all phenomenal. The career intermission team, I can't say enough great things about that office. Like, they worked with me for a year before my assignment, helped me move cross country, helped me get an assignment with my husband, and worked a special duty assignment, a green door assignment for the National Reconnaissance Office. So all of this was being done. I had to get a polygraph. All of this, I was getting phone calls. I even got a phone call from one of the wing commander when I was active duty, when I first applied for the program, wanting to make sure that I was being treated okay, that my career was being watched out for. So I was highly impressed with how I was taken care of, not only entering the program, but during it and coming out of it. With that being said, I did have the advantage of returning to active duty and working right next to my career field manager, which is a pretty rare opportunity for a captain. So he and I worked together talking about, hey, when you return to active duty, and Kate's going to go into all the things that I'm going to let her talk about that, about how you should save up, because yes, I definitely didn't get paid, and moving to DC and not getting paid and buying a house here I was prepared for it, but it's that sticker shock of we're used to getting paid a certain way. And he was aware of all that, my career field manager, and he worked with me. And so he wasn't actually happy with a lot of the stuff that the career field, that the CIP program, they say it's going to take a while to build your pay record. It's going to take a while to get your record and everything back up. He kept speeding everything up. So I was treated just phenomenally when I returned. So I don't really have a typical reentry story. And I don't have a lot of things to pass on of, oh, I wish I would have known this, because I had kind of a unique experience coming back. Although something that he highlighted to me that I never even thought of was, while I was talking to my assignment team, because I was out for 3 years, so I didn't want to lose touch with my career field. Something he let me know was, make sure you're telling your assignment team, not just once, not twice, but almost monthly, checking in, reaching out to them and telling them. So that way, when they're having their vector meetings, when they're having their development team meetings, they're also considering the CIP participants during that, not just your assignment. Because for instance, I'm going up for my majors board. So coming back on active duty, I need to find an assignment that would be good for that. Now I'm mill to mill, so mine was a little more complicated because I wanted to be assigned with my husband. But that's just something that I think, knowing that would have helped me a little bit in talking to my assignment team. And that's something that they are changing from here at this point on. A1 at the Pentagon is aware now that not only do we need to be working assignments prior to the person, about 6-7 months out, now every CIP participant will be mentioned in the development team's special notes section. So that way we're not, as they called it, a ghost in the system. So overall, I can't recommend it enough. I did it for personal reasons. I did have friends that did it for professional reasons. And the program itself, it's exactly what I needed. It hit the pause button. It kind of let me slow down. I got to see my kids a lot. And now I am back on active duty and refreshed. And it's everything that it set out to be. And I'm happy that it's staying around. And it's a good program. So much so that I know that I can't speak for the Space Force yet, I'm transferring in, but the talks that they're having is not only do they want to acquire the Career Intermission program, they want to make it a permanent part of how the Space Force handles their human capital. So that was a really unique experience for me, coming back on active duty, being assigned to the Space Force Planning Task Force team, seeing a new service stood up within my first 4 months back on active duty. So pretty phenomenal. coming back on active duty experience. Kind of got to see it all right at the Pentagon. And now I'm back out in an operational unit. So if you are considering the CIP program, I can't recommend it highly enough. So yeah, and definitely work with your assignment team throughout your entire time you're participating. That would be my 2 cents.
Well, great. Thanks again for being here. I know you have other obligations today, so thank you for the valuable time that you've given to us. And if you do need to bow out, please do, and we can go from here. So
thanks so much.
Yeah. So Kate, thanks for being patient with us here. So you are next. So if you would like to please share your story, kind of the same questions here, why you sought it out, how long did you take, and your general experience. And then after that, since you are this CIP Facebook group admin, you've seen a lot of different experiences and stories. We're going to go into some lessons learned and cover some of those frequently asked questions. So please go ahead.
Great, thanks so much, Jeff. So as you mentioned, I'm Kate Evans. I'm currently a major in the Air Force. So actually, when you say sought out the program, I kind of feel like the program sought me out. So Bree was talking about the pilot year, and as a personnelist in the Air Force, I got to see a little preview of what the program could look like. And then a couple months later, it actually came out as a pilot program. And I happened to be 9 months pregnant at the time. And we lived in Okinawa, Japan. And we are also mill to mill, much like Bree's story. It's going to sound very similar. And we were trying to think through with my husband's busy TDY schedule, and I was an MPF commander in the largest squadron in the Air Force at the time, how we were going to make that work halfway around the world from our entire supportive family. So the Career Intermission program came out right 2 days before my son was born, was when the first window was open for application. So I went in when he was about 5 weeks old, and I hit the button and said, yep, I'm going to be a guinea pig. I'm going to give this a shot. We read over the contract. Everything looked good to us. There seemed to be minimal risk. The biggest factor that drove us to taking it was knowing that we needed a break, kind of as Bree was describing, but more just to walk through that transition of being mill to mill with kids and figuring out how that's going to work. So the biggest thing that drove us to that was just, hey, I'm kind of burnt out. I've been doing this busy job for a couple of years. I don't want to get out. I feel like I have a lot more to give the Air Force. I'd been enlisted for 3 years. I was a cadet for 4 years, and I'd been commissioned for 7 years at that point. So that's a lot of time in already. And I was very much at the top of my game, and I felt good, and I loved what I was contributing and the people I was working with. So I didn't want to just say, okay, I'm having a baby, I'm done with the Air Force, which unfortunately back in the day was what happened with a lot of folks who were mill to mill. And so I'm so thankful that opportunity came around when it did. So I applied in September of 15, and then, September of 14. And then I found out around December of that same year that I was accepted, set my separation date for June of 15, and separated when our son was about 10 months old. And the whole goal was, as Bree mentioned, to have another child and get through the pregnancy and the nursing before I came back to active duty. Something that a lot of parents go through in the military is when they have kids, especially that first year when they're sick or they're nursing, you feel really torn between being a good parent and being a good leader in your primary duty. And that's a major, major struggle that causes a lot of stress. And so I wanted to get through those portions of our second child's life and then come back to active duty already in a good rhythm. So stepping forward from there, my husband got extended at Kadena unexpectedly. And so we ended up staying on an island 1 additional year. And so I was a stay-at-home mom to our son for 1 year there. And then we PCS to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio on his orders. So I PCS as a dependent, which was also an eye-opening and interesting experience. And so I did my second year as a stay-at-home mom at Wright-Pat in Ohio. And then I came back on active duty in June of 17, and I went right into a MAGCOM directorate executive officer position. So really it was seamless for me, and I'm very fortunate for that. Like Bree said, I didn't have a real turbulent return to active duty as far as paperwork and things were concerned. There was a little snafu with some dates, but my leave came back pretty easily. I was paid right off the bat as soon as I returned. And we have to recognize that the program has changed a little bit since then too. So there's different technology in place. So some of those things aren't what they were. But so I went off for the 2 years. We were hoping to have a baby. Unfortunately, we ran into some fertility challenges. And so 45 days back on active duty after the 2 years off, and I was pregnant. So it's just funny how things worked out. But the duration, something that Bree mentioned that I would like to foot stomp to, is it's nice to take the break and it's nice to be away. That's the whole purpose of doing the sabbatical, is to pursue whatever your goal or goals may be. But staying connected with your career field and what's happening in the Air Force while you're out is absolutely critical. I would not be sitting where I am today if I just said, I'm out for 2 years, I'm not talking to anybody, when I come back, I'll come back. So it's really up to the folks who take it to stay engaged, make those connections. I was fortunate enough to be a military spouse, so I was at a base both in Japan and Ohio, so I could walk into the offices and make those connections and build those relationships. But staying up to speed on personnel issues and changes while I was out made coming back that much easier. And I've been back for just over 3 years now.
All right. Well, great. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your story here. So awesome. So now you're ready for the hot seat then? We'll go into a couple situations and yeah, we'll get some more knowledge out here.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So first one I got here. So since you do separate, I am separating going into this program, do I need to do TAP, or the Transition Assistance Program?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it was on my out processing checklist. So I was one of the first folks to go out the door and one of the first to come back in. And so when I was going through my because they give you a separation checklist, just like anybody else who's separating from the military, and TAP was on there. And so I am FSS. So I walked into our team's office and I said, hey, I'm not getting out permanently. Do I have to do this? And they made a few phone calls and they corrected it. And so for me, when I stepped out, they said that was waived. I did not have to do TAP at that time.
Okay. Yeah. It is interesting being that first guinea pig, right? Okay. Let's see. As far as, prior to that initial separation or separating for the program, what would you say is the most important advice for people?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I would highlight here. So one, Bree kind of touched on, and that's making sure your finances are in order. So you're not going to be getting all of the money that you're used to getting. So you will get paid 2/30 of your base pay. That is what you will get per month. You do not get BAH. You do not get BAS. So think about your living situation. We were living overseas. And when my OHA went away, we had to move because the rent, we couldn't afford it and the landlord wouldn't negotiate. So we actually had to move because of that. So those are things that you want to think through financially. How are you going to survive during that time? Two, if you're going to do an education program, like Bree mentioned, do your research, make sure that you are still going to be eligible. Like she said, tuition assistance, you cannot. However, GI Bill you can. If you've already met your requirements and that's a green light for you, then you can use those while you're out. The other two that I would say are your records and your leave. So your medical records should be part of your out processing checklist. You can typically get those on CD, both your medical and your dental, 2 different stops, 2 different offices, 2 different CDs. And you can get your records put onto CD so that you have those in the future, which was critical for me because mine got archived into the Reserve Medical Archives. And so I was able to have those copies on hand. And then your leave. I talked to the CIP office. They're going to try and work through a fix for this. They now have it on their to-do list. But when we separate, we've had some folks like myself, leave was sold back to me instead of just pausing and picking up when I returned. So 48 out of my 59 days were somehow erroneously sold to me. And then I incurred a debt that I had to pay in one lump sum to the Air Force for that, to get my leave back, which I absolutely did. So making sure that you have that screenshot on your last day before you lose your computer access of what your leave balance is, so that you have proof of that if anything were to happen. On that same token, a lot of people ask me, should I just burn out all my leave before I go on SIP? Kate's recommendation would be to store as much leave as you possibly can. When you're projected to come back, you don't know what the world's going to look like, the Air Force, your personal life. So to have that in the bank when you come back, in case you have a medical issue, a family member does, it's just a little extra cushion of security for you to know that you have that, and you're not going to be asking Mother May I right off the bat to go in the hole for leave. And the last thing is your records, your CERF, anything that's in your PRADA record in AMS. I would absolutely make sure you have electronic copies of every past eval, any document that's in PRADA. I would make sure you have it. That piece was seamless for me, but you just never know. So it's good to have that.
Great. Yeah, and I know specifically a couple of other people mentioned make sure you have the bonus pay contracts, on hand, and then that you were receiving it prior, and then of course medical waivers, and that should be part of your records, but you just never know.
That's right.
Okay. So speaking of special bonus pay, so if I received it before the program, can I expect to continue to receive it just day one, coming right back in upon returning from active duty?
Oh yeah, so that's a good question. So I actually don't know the answer. So we might have to look that up, because I have never had any kind of special bonus pay, or I've never had a bonus of any kind in 19 years. So I would have to look that up.
All right. I know in the NDA, the little that I saw possibly is you have to recertify, but that's just, going off of memory.
Yeah, I would have to go back to the SIP Personnel Services Delivery memo, because it's pretty solid. It's only like a 17-page document, very easy reading, and it tends to drill down into some of those things. And if it doesn't, then I always encourage people to call the Total Force Service Center. So if you are interested in the program and there's an answer that can't be found on MyPERS in that PSDM or in the SIP contract, you can always call the Total Force Service Center, and they will try and answer your question. If they can't, they will route you directly to the Career Intermission Program office there at AFPC, who will then get back to you with answers to your questions.
Great. Yeah. And of course, this is Air Force specific, but yeah, this definitely, if you're an Air Force member, this is excellent resource for them. You did cover already that you can use the GI Bill when you're out, and just put it out there, I thought it's actually kind of a great little hack when you do that, because normally you don't get BAH, but GI Bill, you do get BAH, part of the program for that, and which is great, because even if you take online courses like the world that we live in now, there is an online course BAH cap that you can receive. So I thought that was really interesting to pass on.
Yeah, that's very helpful for a lot of folks. And so we find a lot of folks like to take this program for educational purposes. It's very challenging to manage a deployment schedule, a family, whatever additional duties you're assigned, and try to knock out a degree in a short amount of time. No one wants to be working on a degree for 10 or 12 years if you can just take 2 years off and get it done. And so that's a major reason why a lot of people go out on this program.
Okay. So let's talk active duty service commitments. So can I apply if I already have one? The most common one is the PCS, 2 years, or a couple of the career ones, but.
Yeah, so there are some specifications in the PSDM, and I would have to reread those. But as far as when you return, I can tell you that your ADSC when you return is going to be whatever your career intermission program is. So let's use mine for an example. When I separated in June of 2015, I had 7 months left on my previous ADSC for PCSing. So I went out for my 2 years, which means I owed 4 years in ADSC for the career intermission program. So when I returned in June of 17, I owed 4 years for the career intermission program. And then also I owed the additional 7 months that were there before I started the career intermission program. So I owed 4 years and 7 months was my new ADSC upon returning. So any ADSC you have beforehand is in addition to, it runs consecutively with your ADSC. ADSCs upon your return, for the most part, run concurrently. So they will go at the same time. So when I transferred the GI Bill to our second child, my SIP and my GI Bill commitments are now overlapping instead of consecutive.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I feel like you hit it right, the nail on the head there. All right, well, let's move on. So there are typically 3 boards, standard windows to apply. Is there any situation in which I can apply for SIP outside of those typical windows?
Yes, absolutely. So there are humanitarian, hardship, joint spouse assignment. There's a myriad of issues that could be considered critical or hardship on a member. And so there is a process that they can apply out of cycle for those. And in fact, on our Facebook page that we've mentioned a couple times, that there are some folks who have already gone out and come back to active duty. They went out on the program under that hardship clause. And so absolutely, if there's something that popped up that's critical, you know, a parent now has a terminal diagnosis, things like that that are time sensitive, the military will absolutely work with you through those things. Like you mentioned in the beginning, it's a retention program. So the military is trying to retain the talent that they have and the training they've put into all of us, especially if we have some short-term goals or challenges that we can meet in less than a 3-year period, then they absolutely help us do that.
Great. All right. Keep moving along the list here. Doing great. Okay, thanks. So any advice if I am already on a promotion list? So I'm looking at the program, applying, and I know I'm on a list right now. As far as
so if you're already on a promotion list that has been released, we'll just say, congratulations, you've made colonel and your name is on the list. And you want to separate under the current intermission program for a year to pursue whatever, then you would not want to separate until that list is public. You want to make sure that that list is certified, that you have your promotion line number, you know the date that you're supposed to promote, and the SIP office would be able to help you with that too. If you flag that to them, if you're selected for the program and you say, hey, I was on this board, at what point can I or should I separate? They'll help you work through those dates, but you don't want to separate until that is public and approved, so that you maintain your status as a select. And then upon return, the SIP office will remove the pause and help you calculate your new promotion date based on that. So you'll retain your promotion.
All right. Next one here is this, I feel like it could be somewhat similar, but if I've been selected for a PME, IDE, or SDE, you know, any advice there?
Yep, so same concept. We're expecting that list to come out in the next week or two for the Air Force at least, for the matches for the majors and the lieutenant colonels for school and residence. You would want to wait until that list is public and released, that you are affirmed as a match, as a primary. If you are a primary on that list, then as of right now, they will honor you as a primary. And they are still determining whether or not you will retain the specific program to which you're matched. For example, if you're going to be a legislative liaison and you go out on SIP, even though you're matched to that program, when you return, you will still get your seat to IDE and residence. You may or may not still be matched to legislative liaison. So the bottom line is, if you are a primary, not an alternate, but if you're identified as a primary, you will keep it, knowing that the match may or may not be to the same place that you were selected for originally.
Can I apply while I'm on deployment?
Yeah, so you can absolutely apply while you're on deployment. You just cannot have your separation date before you complete your deployment. And so again, the SIP office will help you with that. But due to the 3 windows each year, you do have to do kind of a little bit of projecting anyway. So the window that's open right now for application or coming up, I mean, you set your separation date a year from the time you're notified. So that board probably won't even be released until November or so, would be my guess. The one that's upcoming, November or December. So a lot of this is projecting out your timeline. So even if you're deployed now and you apply now, by the time the board meets and by the time you have your separation date set, could be, 12 to 16 months from now. So yes, definitely.
Okay. And then upon returning, how soon can I new promotion list?
Yeah, so this is one that shocked a few folks that didn't know this, but when you're a new accession, which means you're just coming in for the first time, which when you come off the career intermission program, they treat you like a brand new airman basic or a brand new second lieutenant, like you're brand new to the Air Force. That's what your record will kind of look like. So it's like starting at day one again almost until everything populates. But because of that, you're not eligible to meet a promotion board within the first 6 months. So what that means is if I come back on active duty on 1 January, then I can't meet a promotion board. The board date cannot start until after that 6-month mark for me. And the reason is there are so many prerequisites and so many milestones that happen coming up to that board. If you think about it, for officers, your PRF allocation date and actually creating your PRF. For enlisted, all your records need to be current. You need to have your eval signed off and all the other requirements there. And again, another allocation date. Hey, this is where you were assigned and this is who's going to write your eval. Not to mention your new chain of command may or may not know who you are. So it could potentially hurt you if you meet a board 2 months after you return to active duty after being gone for 3 years. So when you're thinking about separating, just be cognizant of your promotion timelines. Better to separate after a promotion board releases than before you actually meet a board.
Okay, great. And then we talked about we get one move out. So let's say, hey, I intend to first at least move to this area. But let's say, your plans change. Obviously, you're taking 1 to 3 years out. Have you heard of members, or can I move somewhere else? Obviously I may have to pay for it, but do I have to stay in one spot throughout the program?
Sure. So when you separate, normally not under CIP, you get one move back to your point of origin. And if you go, I'm originally from Connecticut. If I decide to move to California instead, when I separate, the military will pay for me to get to Connecticut, and then I will get, it'll be adjusted. If I go over because I'm now going to California, then I have to pay the difference. So when you go out on CIP, same concept. You get one move to wherever you're going to land. And then when you return to active duty, you get one move back from wherever you were. Now, in between those two, if you decide to, move from Alabama to Montana during that time, then you pay for that yourself. But you can move. So the career intermission program has like a monthly muster check-in. And during that time is when you'll log in to the computer. You'll have, they'll give you a website and a login and all that good stuff. And you'll just let CIP know, hey, I've had a change in address since last month. This is my new address. Also, we're expecting a baby any day now, so there will be a new dependent. So those are things that would be captured in the monthly muster.
Okay, good stuff. So along that same line, next question is, plans change. Can I decide actually, hey, I want to come back a little earlier? Or on the flip side, if you only just originally wanted to take 2 years, actually, I'd like to go the full 3 years. Is there any way at all to do that?
Sure, that's a great question. We actually get that one a lot because folks are like, I don't know if I'm going to meet my goals in this many years or that many months. And so there are folks who have done both. That have come back early because they met their goals, and that have requested to extend because they found new goals that were going to take a little bit longer. Both you can apply for. So once you're out on the program, if you'd like to return early or come back late, then you just contact the CIP office. They have some paperwork you fill out, and I believe it has to be signed by the AFPC commander. But so far, I know that several of those have been approved to extend or curtail the time frame selected. And it will also adjust your ADSC upon return because, again, that will only be what you took. So if you requested 2 years and only took 1, you've now just reduced the ADSC you would have had for CIP.
Great. Yeah, great point. Okay. So next one on here. So if I'm at 16 or even 17 years in, could I still possibly even take the program?
Yeah, so there's actually one gentleman who I think was at 18 years in, and he was accepted and went out and came back in. So I would encourage folks with most programs, not just the career intermission program, but if there is something you're not eligible for some reason, there's typically some kind of waiver process. You just have to figure out who the waiver approval authority is. So I know the PSDM has a year cap. I can't remember if it's 15 or what it is, but I would say if you're above that, and you have a goal that you want to achieve, it can't hurt to ask. So definitely submit the application, ask for the waiver, because we at least know one that has been approved.
Okay. Great. Yep. There's a waiver for everything, right?
That's right.
I think we kind of touched on this, but can I return to the exact same base or location from where I separated?
So it is possible, but I won't say that that is the norm or even a guarantee. So much like Bree was talking about being connected with her assignments team, and on the enlisted side, your career functional manager, they will be in touch with you regularly, as will the CIP office. And it's usually about 4 to 6 months out from your return. They'll give you some options of what are going to be available for your grade and AFSC during that return cycle. So they work it much like a typical assignment cycle. They kind of fit you into the plan. And so they'll give you some choices. You can kind of fill out a dream sheet, and then you'll go back and forth directly with your functional or assignment team to make that match. A couple folks we've heard have returned to their previous base, one of which that was a joint spouse factor because her husband was still stationed there. For me, I returned to a completely different base than I separated from, which is typically the norm. So it's really just what's available at that time. What positions does the Air Force need to fill that has a match to your grade and your AFSC?
Okay, great. Yeah, it sounds like the ultimate caveat of the needs of the Air Force.
Always.
Always, yeah. Okay, we're getting through these. You mentioned this a little bit, but timing. Is there anything else you want to talk about timing-wise, of how important that is? Just to really strategically plan out, not only when you leave, but when you return.
Sure. So I think we hit most of the major points on that. So we talked about promotion lists. We talked about school selection, special programs. Consider joint spouse. When is your spouse, especially if you're overseas, what is your spouse's DROS? Make sure that the timing of you separating and returning to active duty kind of aligns with when they're supposed to PCS to a new base. Something my spouse and I considered when he put in his dream sheet when we were moving away from Japan, we made sure that all of the bases on his dream sheet had a MAGCOM, a numbered Air Force, a COCOM, something at that base other than just base level, because we knew I was going to come back on active duty there, and we wanted to give ourselves and the Air Force the best chance possible to joint spouse match us. Because if he chose a base that only his career field was at and they only had one seat available for me and it was filled, we're not doing the Air Force any favors by doing our homework and asking them to double bill it or overfill at that place is really kind of unfair on our part. So just doing your research and paying attention to timelines of your spouse, of yourself, and just making sure that you're helping your assignments team with the decisions that you're making to help you keep your career on the track that it's on.
Okay, all right. Next one here is, I think we covered most of this, but would you like to say anything about upon your return, any other advice returning? We already talked about be prepared with your finances. It may not go smoothly to get paid day one.
That's the big one right now is the finances. It's changed a little bit since I returned. When I returned, it was fairly smooth, minus a data rank and a service date. And so the back pay was a little bit in there, but I was paid from day one when I returned. My understanding is the system is not the same now, and the pay can take 2 to 3 months to kick in. So just make sure you're thinking about that when you separate on CIP, knowing that the day you return you may not get a paycheck within those first 2 weeks or even those first 2 months is what I'm hearing. So the CIP office has taken that for action. It's been flagged to them that it's a significant issue. But there are options. There's advanced pay. There are loans through the Military Family Readiness Center, things like that. But if you want to avoid those kinds of things, then I highly recommend just being prepared to cover yourself for 2 additional months beyond your return.
Would you like to cover any other situations? I think the most common ones people have been hearing is for education or to grow a family. Is there any other kind of stories that you've heard from being the admin of the group that kind of like, oh, wow, that's really interesting, or,
Yeah, it's funny when I tell people I did the career intermission program, the first reaction I get is, huh, what's that? And then another one that's common is, oh, that's that program for pregnant women or women who want to have babies. And I just have to kind of chuckle. While that was the reason I separated, and a couple others have, I just want to share that first year was actually 32 people went into the career intermission program in the pilot year. 18 were enlisted, 16 were officers. So it's not, 14 were officers. It's not this is an officer program or this is an enlisted program. It's an everyone program. And I think it even applies to Guard and Reserve as well. There are some provisions in the contract and in the PSDM that cover that. So myth 1, it's not just for officers. It's not just for enlisted. Myth 2, it's not just for women. Myth 3, it's not just for having babies and raising kids and being a stay-at-home parent. Also that first year, it was 50-50 males and females. So there were 16 males and 16 females that went out that first year. I have friends that did it that literally backpacked the world for the first year and then did a 1-year master's program the second year. I mean, you can use it for whatever you like. That's a common question we get on the Facebook page is, hey, I'm about to apply for CIP and it's asking me, why do I want to apply? Do I tell them the truth? Yes, tell them the truth. Tell them you're burnt out. Tell them you need a break. Tell them you want to have a baby. I want to go backpacking in Europe for a year and have that experience. Whatever your reason is, put it in there. The board is going to make their decision based on your record, your duty performance, and your retainability as an Air Force member. That is again, we'll foot stomp that. That's the whole point of the program, is bringing your talent and your experiences back into the fold for the betterment of the Air Force and for you and your growth and development. So the reason you go out only really seems to matter for demographic purposes. They just want to kind of get an understanding so they can mold and shape the program in the future to best fit the needs of our people. So that's why they ask why you want to go out, is really for statistical and demographic information. But please definitely be honest.
Okay. Yeah, excellent points. Excellent. Well, my final question here, this is it. Is there anything else that you really want to pass on for people that are considering this?
I guess the biggest thing for me is just spread the word. Even if you watch this and this program isn't for you, keep in mind your leaders, your peers, your troops, your family members that serve, anybody that might benefit from this program. Talent is going out the door in droves. And it's very, very sad. And they're going for great opportunities and things that are out there for them and pursuing their goals, and that's great. But for folks who just have short-term goals, kind of like I did, it'd be really great for them to know that this is an option. And what we're finding is a lot of people just don't know about the program. So really spreading the word. If you are a leader in your unit, maybe considering holding a Zoom, reviewing the PSDM, getting someone like me to come talk to your unit about what it is and do a Q&A with people. Just really getting the word out there is what we're trying to do, especially with the Facebook page. It's really sad when I talk to people who separated since the program was initiated and they didn't even know it was an option. And they are so sad because they would have chosen that option. And so that's heartbreaking for me. So I would really love to just get the word out there and open some more doors for people.
Excellent. Yeah, I feel like, that you just basically described my whole core reason of, starting this nonprofit, because I constantly found peers and other members just unaware of some great programs. It's like, no, this is out there. And so, I'll do our little plug here, but, I can't thank you enough for the time. I think I promised you maybe 30 minutes. We obviously went over that, but I feel this was extremely valuable. And I'm excited to share this out with the broader community, not just service members, but for families, for them to understand that these programs exist and these options to maybe poke their memory, like, hey, maybe we should do this. And yeah, so that's all I have to say. We went way over our time, but it's thanks again, Kate, for being here with us on Bottom Line Upfront Military Benefits. We hope anyone watching helps them realize, utilize, and optimize this program. And my last little plug is that any like or shares or comments means the world to our growing mission. So with that, until next time.